My friend, there comes a time when you must stop staring into the rearview mirror and start looking through the windshield of faith. There comes a moment when you must loosen the grip on what's behind you and reach for what lies. Some of you are chained to memories, tied to past failures, haunted by words spoken in anger, by actions taken in weakness. You walk through life with a weight on your shoulders, a burden on your heart, and a shadow over your joy. But hear me today, you were not made to live in your past. The past may explain you, but it does not define you. The wounds may be deep, but the grace of God is deeper still. You say, but preacher, you don't know what I've done? No, maybe I don't, but I know this. There is no sin so dark that the blood of Jesus cannot wash it white as snow. There is no failure so final that the love of God cannot redeem it. The enemy wants you to stay stuck in guilt, to replay the same scenes, the same mistakes, the same missed chances. But I came to tell you today, you are not your past, you are not your divorce, you are not your addiction. You are not the betrayal, you are not the abuse, you are not the secret you are afraid to tell. The word says to forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing, not a recycled version of your shame, a new beginning. But in order for God to do a new thing, you must let go of the old thing. Some of you are holding on to unforgiveness like a badge of honor. Let it go. Some of you are carrying bitterness in your soul like it's protecting you. Let it go. Some of you have built an identity around being broken. Let it go. The past is not your prison, it's your platform. The cracks in your story are where the light of God's mercy shines the brightest. So today, don't just hear me, respond. Don't just believe change is possible. Walk in it. Step out of the shadows of yesterday and into the light of today. Because your story is not over. Because grace is still greater. Because the God who holds your future has already dealt with your past. So take a deep breath, lift up your head, and say it with me, I'm letting go. Letting go of fear, letting go of who I used to be, and becoming who I was always meant to. There comes a time in every life when the echoes of yesterday begin to ring louder than the promises of tomorrow, and we find ourselves reaching back to moments we cannot change, clinging to memories that no longer serve us, replaying failures that were meant to be lessons, not prisons. And we build houses in places we were only meant to visit, camping out in seasons that were only meant to pass, dragging our present through the mud of our mistakes and wondering why we feel stuck, tired, burdened as if life has passed by, when the truth is it hasn't passed. We've simply paused too long at a stop that was never the destination. And oh, how easy it is to return to the familiar pain, how tempting it is to replay that argument, relive that decision, rehearse that fall because the past is predictable, even when it's painful. And there's something strangely comforting about staying where we know the damage, where we recognize the landscape of our regret, where every scar has a name and every silence has a memory. And we convince ourselves that going back is safer than pressing forward, that being broken is easier than believing we could be healed, that the ruins are better than the rebuild. And so we live in the rubble of what was, pretending it's a foundation for what will be. But the past, my friend, was never meant to be a place of residence. It was designed to be a place of reference, a compass to show us where not to go, a mirror to remind us who we are not anymore, a trail of lessons, not a chain of condemnation, a testimony of where grace stepped in and mercy rewrote the ending, a chapter that has been closed, signed, sealed, and covered, not a jail cell we keep returning to with the key in our own hand. And yet too many of us stand at the doorway of freedom looking backward with longing instead of forward with faith. You can't drive a car looking only in the rearview mirror and expect to arrive at the right destination. You can't run a race with your head turned around, and you surely can't build a new life while clinging to the ashes of the old one. Because the God who calls you to greater doesn't need your perfect past. He just needs your surrendered present. And as long as your hands are full of what was, you'll never be able to receive what is and what could be, and as long as your heart is tethered to yesterday, you'll never find joy. And there is a reason why the windshield is bigger than the mirror, because where you're going is far more important than where you've been. And though your past may have shaped you, it does not have the power to define you unless you give it permission. Unless you keep rehearsing the pain instead of releasing it, unless you keep naming yourself by your mistakes instead of your mission, and unless you believe the lie that what happened to you is greater than what God can do through you, you will always remain a resident of a place meant only to be passed through. So don't pitch a tent in the land of your regrets. Don't build a monument to your failures. Don't put wallpaper on your shame and call it home. Tuck in your fears and kiss them goodnight as if they belong in your bed. Because the past may explain the tears in your eyes, but it cannot erase the purpose in your soul. And no matter how many times you've messed up, fallen short, turned around, sat down, or given up, the invitation to move forward still stands. The grace to begin again is still fresh. And the voice of the one who calls you says, not a go back, but a come forward. And when the enemy whispers that you'll never change, that you'll always be that broken person, that addict, that liar, that failure, that forgotten name, you can stand tall and say, not today, not anymore, not this time, because I may remember what I did, but I also remember who forgave me, who loved me when I hated myself, who lifted me when I couldn't lift my head. And that memory is not a chain. It is a banner, a declaration, a reminder that my past is a story of redemption, not a sentence of condemnation. So walk out, rise up, press on, tear down the house you built in yesterday and plant your feet on the ground of today, because you are not meant to live there, dwell there, die, moan forever there. You are meant to learn, to grow, to testify, to say I was there, but I'm not staying. I've been through it, but I'm not bound by it. I remember it, but I refuse to relive it, because the past is a place of reference, not residence. And by the grace of God, I'm moving on. There is a weight that doesn't show on your shoulders, but drags your soul to the ground, a heaviness not made of iron or stone, but of memories, mistakes, moments you wish you could erase, words you wish you could take back, decisions you wish you never made. And this weight has a name. Not one, but two, guilt and shame. And they do not come to heal. They do not come to teach. They do not come with mercy or truth. They come with chains. They come with whispers in the night. They come with locked doors and no keys, and if you let them, they will turn your life into a prison of a should have, and I could have, only I hadn't, and they will disguise themselves as humility, when really they are bondage wearing a mask of repentance. You see, guilt is the echo of something done, but shame is the voice that says it wasn't just what you did, it's who you are, and guilt says, I failed. But shame shouts, I'm a failure, and you begin to carry that voice like a banner over your life. Now, you begin to wear it like a name tag you never take off. And though people may see you smiling, standing, serving, inside you're still shackled, still crawling through memories you can't fix, still carrying the rubble of your brokenness like it's your identity. Still waiting for punishment even after forgiveness has already been offered. And the tragedy is you think this weight is noble, that somehow carrying your guilt is the price you must pay for. But hear me, the cross did not make room for you to stay in chains. The blood was not shed so you could hold on to what he already carried. The debt was not paid so you could keep paying it in silence and sleepless nights and pretending to be fine while crumbling on the inside. And what the enemy wants you to believe is that your shame is sanctification, that if you feel bad long enough, maybe you'll be good enough, that if you suffer a little more, maybe you'll deserve joy, maybe you'll be clean, maybe you'll finally be forgiven. But that's not redemption, that's religion, and that's not God, that's guilt in disguise. Because the Spirit of God convicts, but he does not condemn, he corrects, but he never crushes. He shines light, but he does not shame. And if the voice you're listening to only breaks you down and never lifts you up, only reminds you of your filth, but never points you to grace, then that voice is not heaven's, it's hell's. And you've got to stop calling those chains of growth. Stop calling your cage humility. Stop believing that what he nailed to the cross needs to be nailed to your back again and again and again and again. Growth does not come from shame. Growth comes from grace, and guilt may get your attention for a moment, but it cannot carry you to healing, because guilt was never the goal, freedom was. And the one who called you by name did not die so you could drown in memories, did not rise so you could stay stuck in yesterday, did not call you his child just to watch you act like a slave to your own past. And there is no healing in rehearsing what he already forgave. There is no maturity in marinating in misery. There is no strength in self-punishment. There is only exhaustion, only bitterness, only a slow death of the soul God came to make alive. And I know what it's like to replay the words, the moments, the regret like a movie you can't stop, to kneel in prayer but feel unworthy to speak, to look in the mirror and see nothing but the broken version of who you used to be. And yet the one who sees it all, knows it all, remembers it all better than you ever will, and that very one still calls you beloved, still calls you redeemed, still calls you forgiven, still calls you chosen, still calls you his. Not because you earned it, but because mercy said so, because grace wrote your name in a place guilt cannot erase, because love sees what shame cannot. So no, guilt and shame are not your teachers. They are your tormentors. They are not guides to holiness, but distractions from hope. They do not sharpen you. They strangle you. They do not humble you. They paralyze you. And it is time to break up with the lies that tell you pain is proof of progress, that healing must always hurt, that joy must always be earned, because the truth is, Jesus took the weight so you wouldn't have to, carried the curse so you could carry his peace, wore the crown of thorns so you could wear the crown of mercy, stretched out his arms so you could stretch out yours without fear of what you used to. And maybe today is the day you lay it down. Maybe today is the day you stop apologizing for things already forgiven. Stop digging up what grace buried. Stop naming yourself by what you survived. And start living like someone truly, deeply, wildly free. Free not because you did it all right, but because he made it all right. Not because you fixed it, but because he finished it. Not because you carried it perfectly, but because he carried you completely. And now, right now, you can choose to walk out of the prison cell with your head high and your soul light, because guilt and shame were chains, not tools of growth. And those chains have no hold on you anymore. There is a door in the heart that many keep locked, and not because they don't know the way out, but because the key feels too painful to hold, and that key is forgiveness, not a suggestion, not a warm feeling, not a soft whisper on a good day, but a deliberate, defiant, grace-soaked act of war against bitterness, against memory, against vengeance. So many choose to stay in the cell with the door already open, holding tight to the offense like it's treasure, clutching the wound like it's identity, building shrines around the betrayal as if honoring the pain somehow justifies the prison. And all the while, the voice of freedom is calling, saying, let it go, child, let it go. But pride grips tighter, fear whispers louder, and the cycle of anger keeps. Forgiveness does not say what happened was okay. It does not pretend the hurt didn't happen. It does not excuse the abuse or minimize the betrayal or rewrite the truth into something it wasn't. No, forgiveness looks the truth square in the eye, names the wound honestly, remembers the scar deeply, and then chooses to no longer be defined by it, no longer be bound to it, no longer let the one who caused the pain continue to have authority over the story. Because freedom doesn't come when they say sorry. It comes when you release the need for them to. It comes when you realize that their actions don't get to decide your peace, that their silence doesn't cancel your healing, and that your heart is not their hostage. So many think forgiveness is weakness, that to forgive is to lose, to surrender, to let them win. But the truth is, forgiveness is not giving up. It's rising up. It's refusing to let the enemy keep you chained to yesterday. It's saying, you may have hurt me then, but you don't get to haunt. It's understanding that carrying the weight of what they did only makes you more tired, more bitter, more numb. And that no amount of rehearsing the wrong will ever make it right. No amount of rage will ever rewrite the past. And so you stop waiting for closure to come from them and let it rise up from within. You stop waiting for their apology and accept God's grace as your healing balm. And yes, sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the one in the mirror, the one who should have known better, the one who said too much or not enough, the one who stayed too long or left too early, the one who was silent when it mattered most. And you replay the scenes over and over, wondering how different it could have been if you just chose differently, and the guilt becomes your daily companion, the regret your morning coffee, the shame your lullaby. But hear this, the blood that was shed didn't skip over your name. The cross wasn't partial. The grace wasn't limited. And the mercy wasn't selective. So if God has forgiven you, who are you to withhold what heaven has already released? Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation every time, doesn't mean access restored, doesn't mean you let the same poison into your life again. But it does mean you release the grip the pain has on your joy. It does mean you refuse to be a victim one more day. It does mean you choose to be whole, even if the story is still broken. And you walk forward not because it doesn't hurt, but because you know healing hurts less than hatred. And grace feels better than grudges, and peace is louder than force. And when you finally drop the weight you were never meant to carry, you realize just how long it's been stealing your breath. And let me tell you, there is no freedom like the freedom that floods your soul when you forgive. No peace like the kind that follows a released offense. No strength like what fills your spirit when you let go of what you thought you couldn't live without hate. Because the same power that raised Christ from the grave is the same power that enables you to forgive the one who lied, the one who left, the one who destroyed what you cherished, the one who never came back. And when you forgive, chains break, not just around them, but around you. Walls fall, hearts heal, and the light begins to pour in again. So you can either hold the offense or hold your peace, but you can't hold both. You can either carry their wound or carry your healing, but you can't do both. And I don't know who hurt you. I don't know how deep it went or how long it stayed. But I do know this. You are not called to be a prisoner of someone else's actions. You are not destined to replay the pain forever. You are not too far from restoration. And the forgiveness you give is not a gift for them. It's a gift for you. It's the door swinging open. It's the chains falling off. It's the moment your soul exhales after years of suffocating beneath the weight of it all. So today, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when they say the right words, but today, I dare you, I beg you, I challenge you. Take the key, turn it in faith, not in feeling, release the debt, let the captives go, and watch as you realize the one being set free was never them. It was always you, because forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength. It is not denial. It is forgetting the pain. It is remembering that God is bigger than the pain. And that's why forgiveness is true, deep, unshakable. Forgiveness will always be the key to freedom. There is a lie that sits heavy in the bones of the broken, a whisper that sounds like truth because it speaks in the voice of your failure, because it wears the face of your past, because it reminds you of everything you've done wrong and nothing you've done right. And it says, this is who you are now. This is all you'll ever be, that the choices you made, the path you walked, the mistakes you regret, the sin you hate, the mess you caused. That's your name now, your label now, your story now, and you carry that weight like it belongs to you. Wear it like a coat tailored by shame, not realizing that every breath you take is proof that you are not finished yet, that your name is not what you did, but what you decide to do next. Because you are not your worst decision, not your darkest day, not your most broken moment, not the season you wish never happened, not the version of yourself that you've already outgrown, not the echoes of who you were before grace found you, before truth grabbed you, before mercy rewrote you. And you can live your whole life answering to a name God never gave you, walking under the weight of guilt He already lifted, defining yourself by a story He already redeemed, and all the while the voice of your Creator is crying out, not who you were, but who you are becoming. Not where you've been, but where you're going. Not the label the world gave you, but the identity He sealed in. And I know what it feels like to be haunted by your own history, to wake up and remember what you did, who you hurt, what you lost, to sit in rooms filled with laughter and feel like you don't deserve joy, to be surrounded by love and feel like an imposter, because somewhere deep inside, Shane keeps singing that old song, keeps dragging you back to that old scene, keeps chaining you to the version of yourself that God already crucified. And unless you learn to speak a better word, unless you learn to answer to the name God calls you now, unless you choose to step out of the grave and into grace, you will keep reliving what was instead of becoming what could. Because identity is not inheritance, choice, not legacy, it's direction. And every single day, every breath, every heartbeat, every sunrise is an invitation not to prove yourself, but to become yourself, not to earn grace, but to live in it, not to fight for love, but to rest in it. And the beauty of the gospel is not that you become perfect, it's that you are being transformed, renewed, reshaped day by day, moment by moment, decision by decision, not by your strength, but by surrender, not by pretending, but by repentance, not by getting it all right, but by being willing to try again when you. So no matter what you've done, no matter how deep it ran, how far you wandered, how loud it screamed, how long it lasted, that is not who you are, because who you are is what rises from the ashes, what stands up after the fall, what reaches for the light even with dirt on your hands, what believes there is more ahead than what's behind, what chooses forgiveness over fear, what decides to be better, not because of pride, but because of promise, because something in you knows you were not made to stay in them, because something in you knows that grace doesn't just clean you, it calls. And let this be the line drawn in the sand, the turning point, the moment where shame loses its echo, where the past no longer owns the pen, where you stop answering to guilt and start responding to grace, where you decide that who you were does not get to override who you're becoming, that the decisions of your past may be chapters in your book, but they are not the title, not the theme, not the ending, because the same God who spoke light into darkness is still speaking over you now, saying, arise, walk, live, become, not because you earned it, but because He loves you enough to keep calling you forward. And yes, the world may try to remind you of your record, may bring up receipts, may replay the reel, but you don't have to prove anything to anyone who still sees you through the lens of what you were, because their opinion doesn't define you, their memory doesn't limit you. Their refusal to see your growth does not stop your transformation. And the power of becoming is not in being seen. It's in being known by the one who sees you completely past, present, and future, and still calls you chosen, still calls you redeemed, still calls you worthy. So walk out of that grave of regret, shake off the names you were never meant to wear, bury the old version of yourself for good, and rise into the truth that you are not what you've done. You are who you choose to become. And today, right now, in this very moment, you can choose life. You can choose healing. You can choose wholeness. You can choose to become everything grace saw in you when you were still lost, still bleeding, still running, because your story is not finished and the author is not through. There are hands that tremble when they hold what's been shattered, hearts that no longer beat with rhythm but with hesitation, lives that feel more like scattered ruins than sacred design. And we wonder how anything good can come from this, how anything holy could rise from the wreckage we become. But God, in his mercy and his mystery and his unsearchable grace, does not look at the broken and walk away, does not turn his face from the ruins, does not discard the fragments like the world does. No, he kneels down in the dust, gathers every splintered piece, every forgotten shard, every jagged corner of what once was, and he holds it all in his hands as if it were treasure, as if it still matters, because to him it does. And what others see as trash, he sees as the beginning of a beautiful, redemptive, glorious masterpiece in the making. You see, God does not build with perfection. He builds with surrender, not with people who have it all together, but with those who have fallen apart in the dark, cried out when no one listened, made mistakes that echo louder than their intentions, people who've been betrayed, abandoned, overlooked, and undone. Yet he takes those very wounds, those very scars, those very regrets, and he turns them into the very place where his glory shows through, because grace does not need perfection to work. It needs permission. And when you hand him the mess, he doesn't flinch, doesn't shake his head, doesn't say it too much or too far gone. Instead, he whispers a finally and begins the holy work of making beauty out of ashes. And I know what it feels like to stare at what's left of a life you thought would be whole, to look around and see pieces that don't seem to fit anymore, dreams that feel like dust, relationships that ended in silence, days marked more by failure than progress, nights more by tears than peace. And yet it's in those very pieces, the overlooked, the discarded, the wept over, that God does his best work, not by erasing the cracks, but by filling them with glory. Not by pretending the breaking never happened, but by weaving purpose through every fracture, every failure, every fall, until the very thing you were ashamed of becomes the very place his light shines the bright. Because he is not the God of polished people, he is the God of prodigals and lepers, the God of tax collectors and doubters, of outcasts and deniers, of people with past and secrets and wounds. And still he calls them, still he uses them. Still he writes through their lives, not despite their brokenness, but because of it. The world sees damage, he sees death. When the world says they're disqualified, he says, not destined. When the world points to the cracks and says, you're done, he points to the same cracks and says, and watch what I can do. Because nothing is wasted in the hands of the Redeemer. Not your sin, not your sorrow, not even your silence. And there is something holy that happens when you stop hiding the broken places, when you stop pretending you're whole while crumbling inside, when you lift your hands not in pride but in surrender, when you say, God, this is all I've got. It's not much, it's not pretty, it's not what it used to be. But it's yours if you still want it. And that's when heaven leans in. That's when the Spirit begins to breathe new life into dead places. That's when the broken becomes blessed, not because it's fixed, but because it's given. And what is given to God becomes sacred ground, holy history, living testimony. So if you feel disqualified, if you feel disassembled, if you've been carrying around the lie that your past is too ugly, your heart too hard, your faith too faint, let me tell you what the enemy fears most is not your perfection, but your surrender, not your performance, but your honesty. Because when you stop pretending, when you finally say, on my own, that's when the rebuilding begins. That's when the potter picks up the clay and starts to reshape it with love, not just back into what it was, but into something greater, something greater, something strong, something more beautiful than it ever could have been without the breaking. Because brokenness in the world is seen as failure, but in the hands of God, it is the beginning of the masterpiece, of the place where healing flows, where strength is born, where stories are written not with ink, but with mercy, stories that show others they're not too far gone. That grace still reaches low, that redemption still runs deep, that God still writes in the language of love through people who were never supposed to make it, And the greatest sermons are not always preached from pulpits, but from lives rebuilt after everything fell apart. So bring him the pieces, not the performance. Bring him the wounds, not the walls. Bring him the raw and the real and the ruin, because the gospel was never about perfect people becoming better. It was always about broken people becoming whole. And your story is not over. Your hope is not lost. Your future is not canceled, because the hands that form the stars still reach for shattered hearts, and God, in his infinite mercy, still uses broken pieces to build the most beautiful story. There comes a moment in every heart where the road forks, where you stand in the space between what was and what could be, between the comfort of the familiar and the call of the unknown. And fear will always point you backward, because it's so predictable. Because you already know how to survive in that space, even if it's killing your spirit, even if it's shrinking your soul, even if it's stealing your joy. But faith, oh, faith will always pull you forward, not because you're ready, not because the path is clear, not because you have all the answers, but because there is something greater on the other side of your obedience than there ever was in your hesitation. And God has not called you to dwell in delay, but to walk in. Fear sounds like reason, but it speaks in change, speaks in limits, speaks in a what ifs, and not enoughs and a maybe laters. And it wraps itself around your legs like binds until you're stuck in a place God told you to pass through, rehearsing excuses instead of declaring promises, building walls instead of walking by faith. And all the while, the Spirit of God is still whispering a move, still saying a go. Still calling you out of the boat, out of the cave, out of the shadows, out of the grave, not because the storm is gone, but because he is still greater than the storm. And he didn't bring you this far to leave you stranded at the edge of your breakthrough. Because faith is not about feelings, it's about forward motion. It's about putting one foot in front of the other, even when your knees are shaking, even when your heart is pounding, even when the voices of doubt are louder than the sound of your praise, because faith walks even when it does see. Speaks even when it doesn't feel, believes even when it doesn't understand, and sometimes the greatest miracle is not in what God does, but in what you dare to do in response to his voice, and how you step, and how you trust, and how you refuse to go back to Egypt when Canaan is still ahead. And I know what it's like to be afraid to move, to stand in the middle of the unknown with the past calling you by name, and the future daring you to believe, to feel like you don't have what it takes, to worry you'll fail again. To carry the weight of what didn't work last time like it's prophecy instead of memory. But let me tell you something. Fear will always be loud, but it doesn't get the final word, because the same God who split the sea, who walked on water, who shut the mouths of lions and raised dead things back to life, that God is still calling you, still equipping you, still going before you and behind you, still fighting battles you haven't seen yet. And he's not asking for perfection, just for trust. Because the enemy doesn't fear your plans or your dreams or your vision board. He fears your movement. He fears your obedience. He fears the moment you realize that faith is not about waiting for the path to be paved, but walking even when it looks impossible, even when it looks foolish, even when you feel like you're the least likely person to make it. Because when you move in faith, heaven moves with you, doors open, chains break, mountains shift, and the kingdom advances, not because you are strong, but because you said yes. So don't let fear keep you in cycles. Don't let fear drag you back to what God already delivered you from. Don't let the comfort of faith convince you to miss the promise of freedom. Don't let the weight of a what if bury the power of even if, because you were not created to survive in fear. You were created to thrive in faith, and every great move of God begins with a step, a simple, trembling, obedient, defiant step that says, I won't stay here, I won't shrink back, I won't give in, I'm going forward because God is with me and he's worth it. And maybe today's step isn't flashy or loud or dramatic. Maybe it's quiet, maybe it's private, maybe it's messy, but it's a step nonetheless, and that step matters, that step counts, that step is whole, because faith is not proven in the finish line, but in the first move, not in the applause, but in the obedience. And when you dare to step forward in faith instead of backward in fear, you partner with heaven. You walk in the power of the one who never fails, and you become living proof that even the smallest step with God is greater than the grandest retreat without. So rise up, even if you're trembling. Speak up, even if your voice shakes. Walk forward, even if the path looks dark, because faith is not the absence of fear. It's a decision that fear will not have your feet, not have your future, not have your future, not have your purpose, not have your story. In the name of the one who calls you, equips you, fills you, and goes before you, step forward, step boldly, step again, and let your life be a testimony that faith moves mountains, but first it moves